Hi, I'm Liz Granberg-Jerome from Gypsy Dreamer Quilts, and I'm here to welcome you to the first month of This Way and That, the second Saturday shop sampler for Quilters Paradise in Baldwin City, Kansas. And month one's block is Jacob's Cross. And Jacob's Cross is just half square triangles and 4 patches, and it's made up of 4 Jacob's ladder blocks that go together to make the large 24-inch block. And that's the one we're going to be working on today. Pause. So this is one of the Jacob's ladder blocks. They are 4 patches and half square triangles, and that's what we're going to be making today. So 4 half square triangles. We're going to mark, come on in, we're going to mark your dark and light fabrics from corner to corner. And I've marked them already with a dark pen so you can see them. And you're going to mark from corner to corner in the center. Typically, people will tell you then to draw a line, putting this 1/4 inch at the center and draw a line outside. However, if you're like me, sewing inside that line can be a challenge. So what I do is I put my ruler and I line that center line up just off center so that I'm actually drawing on the edge of the ruler, and when I move that line over and the center is here, the edge of the ruler should be on top of that line that you've drawn. That will give you the scant 1/4 inch that you need. Then you're going to turn it around and do the same thing. Line that 1/4 inch line that up just to the other side of that center line. Do your next line, and then that's your stitching line. So when you stitch these, I will go ahead, now one of these has been trimmed, but I go ahead and I stitch down one side, and because I've drawn those lines closer to the center, I can actually stitch on top of the line where I go in a much straighter direction than when I'm trying to sew next to a line. Then I go ahead and stitch across the end because that's going to be trimmed off. And then I come back up the other side. And when it's sewn on both sides, then you're going to cut it down the middle and you're going to press that block towards the dark. So put the dark side up. You'll take it to your ironing board and press it. And then I take my 6.5 inch rule, and it has a line diagonally from corner to corner. I know that this block needs to be 4.5 inches trimmed. So I'm going to lay that center line exactly on the fold where I've pressed my block. I'm going to trim on both sides. And I can trim this one for you right here. And right here. And then I'm going to turn it and bring it around and line up the 4.5 and the center line so that your corner, that center line is lined up in the corner as well. And then you can trim the second side, second 2 sides. And then you've got a 4.5 inch block. A lot of times in patterns you'll see half square triangles sized in 7/8 instead of at 5 inches. I rounded mine up to 5 to give you a little bit extra leeway so that you can get those 1/4 inch seams in and still have some to trim down because you don't want your blocks too small. So those are your half square triangles, and even trimming just a little bit makes a big difference when you're making your blocks out of multiple units. So for the 4 patches, you're going to be sewing your strips together in long strip sets. paired up the way the instructions tell you. then you're going to be cutting off 2.5-inch pieces. I like to line up one of the lines on the ruler with the fold line. Make sure it's square on the outside. Trim it off. And trim it off. And then you're going to turn one around so that the colors are inverted and put them on top of each other. And when you lay them on top of each other, if you fold this back, you're going to notice that your seams nest real nice together. One seam is pressed up and one is pressed down because they're inverted from each other from the long strip. And that's what you're going to sew together. And once you get them sewn together, then you're going to take them to the ironing board and you're going to press them out. What I hope you will learn to do, and I'm going to try and show you here, is once you press them out, if you look, you can pull the top layer back and pull these few stitches apart and then press this seam over. That's called spinning your seams. And that will make all of the seams going the same direction. It will make the blocks, when they go together into the bigger block, line up better because your seams will nest in places that they wouldn't have otherwise. So once you get all those pieces made, and on the 4 patches, even though your strips are cut at 2.5 inches each, if you set your seam at 1/4, there's times when your 1/4 might be slightly off. The fabric might stretch some when it's pressed. I always go back and check my blocks and make sure they're the size they're supposed to be. These should be 4.5, the same size as the half square triangles. Even if it's just a sliver, I trim those off, I turn it around, and I would trim it again and make sure those are 4.5. When you're making a quilt with multiple blocks that have multiple units, if you add a 32nd or a 16th of an inch to each unit, by the time you get to the end of your quilt, it's not going to be the right size. So try and make sure each of your units is put together and then trimmed to the size it needs to be.